Hello and welcome to the EMEA Investment and Economic Forum Investor Insights. Today I have the pleasure of being joined by Dr. Savvas Savouri, Chief Investment Officer at the renowned London-based hedge fund Toscafaund Asset Management. Given the turmoil instigated in the financial markets by the coronavirus pandemic, we are keen to gain his insights into how a large strategic investor is dealing with the crisis. Dr. Savouri, hello and welcome to our program. Given the current shocks within the financial markets recently, what are the biggest short to medium-term challenges now for Toscafaund and your clients?
We have very specific issues and investments. We are heavily invested in the UK. We entered this crisis fully invested, and glad we were. It's simply, we've seen public markets price lower, assets that we think are fundamentally much more attractive. So we're very lucky because being 54, this is not the first time I've experienced these sort of shocks, and none of us here have.
Is there anything different about this crisis and your investment approach through it?
Every crisis is different, is unique. Having said that, you can draw from past experiences, and you can create a sort of a photo fit or a montage of how different crises resemble this one, how what isn't relevant and what is relevant. Take 2008. What you had there was an underlying collapse in banking sectors in the US and across Europe. Banks this time around are fundamentally strong because they were forced to be strong over the last 12 years by regulators that insisting that they build up their balance sheets and put in some pro-cyclical defense mechanisms which they can now draw upon. And this is more like 9/11. You had an event, a shock event, the horrible terrorism that we saw on September 11th. And this is a shock event. And the question is, how long is the half-life? How long will the aftershocks from this last? And quite frankly, I think that we mustn't exaggerate or overestimate the length of the aftershocks of the half-life. This time next year, certainly in the UK, I think business will have more than recovered. I can't be so sure about the United States for a whole wealth of reasons. But I do know one thing. China will not let this interrupt the growth it's been managing perfectly for 18, 20 years. And if China doesn't see an interruption to its growth, then anyone investing in sectors that capitalize upon China's growth will benefit. We will never have the same approach to healthcare again. Intensive care units will be increased. The capacity to hold vaccines or develop vaccines will be increased. Supply chains, not simply supply chains in medicine, but in general lifestyles. That how we hold food and products will change, because we're going to think about this. This will leave some sort of fairly important lifestyle changes behind it. Not all bad things. If you think about where we have been, we came into this crisis believing in what was known, or has been known as just-in-time supply management. The idea was that you just got your materials in enough volume to produce things, send out straight away. The inventories were kept very lean, and therefore warehouses were kept very, very, very lean. Going forward, what you're going to have is every small business and every large business, every small household will insist, and every government will insist upon inventories of non-perishable goods. And that will require warehousing. It will require increased demand, increased production to meet increased inventory demand.
How do you view the future of the aviation sector, not to mention tour operators and major holiday resorts?
Clearly, they've been badly damaged by what's happened, because if you can't get on an airplane, you can't go to a hotel, and you can't go to a hotel, you can't visit a restaurant or a bar. But bear in mind, I'm not being glib here, if you think about the world before this crisis began, the single biggest theme was the environment. And you had young, rather naive Greta Thunberg telling us that we shouldn't go on airplanes because they're bad for the environment. what she was telling us effectively was don't go to hotels or restaurants or bars in other countries, because to do that you need to get on an airplane. So this is dramatised how important it is to help the environment, which we all want to do, but to do it in a measured way. So what we've had in the last 3 weeks is a illustration of what damage to an economy bringing forward zero carbon emissions does. This effectively, Greta Thunberg and her acolytes have demanded that we bring ever more forward zero carbon emissions. Well, this brought zero carbon emissions forward to today, because there are very few carbon emissions going on in aircraft at the moment. And you've seen how much harm that does to an economy. Maybe the balancing between doing good to the environment and the economy has been one lesson that we've learned from this. Is to repeat, hotels and restaurants and bars can't be occupied unless someone is transported by an airplane. Clinical fact. If you're Spain or Greece or Cyprus or Malta or Ireland or any of the Philippines or Thailand or Australia, and you've got a fairly large tourist industry, and you want to protect the environment, then you know that you've got to change the way you operate economically. We're having some very, very powerful lessons taught to us in real time. And I hope those lessons are learned.
What shape will the UK state finances be in the medium term, given the simultaneous challenge of finalizing Brexit trade negotiations with the EU? Can Brexit go ahead as scheduled, given the circumstances?
There is no European Union. What is the European Union? It's a single market of goods and people. People aren't moving freely across Europe. They can't, they're not allowed to. Neither are goods. So the whole European Union model that we knew before this crisis has been destroyed. And it will have to be put together again. But the UK will have to rejoin other European Union countries on different terms. But so too will Spain and Italy. And so too will Greece and Cyprus. So too will Estonia and Lithuania and Germany and France. This is an opportunity for the European to redefine itself. Because as of March 27th, 2020, it doesn't exist. It's a fiction. The Eurozone does, because it's a single currency. But in terms of the thing known as a single market, that stopped the moment borders were shuttered up and people were stopped from flying freely across them. Let's hope we come out strong from this. And to repeat, what we don't want is the other side of this to be protectionism and isolationism. We want it to be a redefined free market, including China.
Given your market insight, we couldn't resist asking you to play a quick, long, short session to close. Is that okay for you?
Most definitely, yes.
I'm going to start with sterling.
Long.
The euro.
Against who? Currencies are only valuable in terms of exchange rates. So if you're saying euro sterling, I'd say long sterling and short euro. If it was euro dollar, I'd say go long euro, short dollars.
And the last one is Trump.
Between now and November, this looks likely the US descends into an even worse medical crisis than Spain and Italy is done.
Thank you very much for your insights, Dr. Savouri.